Hello and welcome to a new edition of Rendezvous de l'Expertise. We're live from Helsinki, Finland. Expertise France is France's public agency for international technical cooperation. Expertise France works globally to build capacity in many different fields: governance, security, climate, health, and digital transformation. Today's focus, cyber resilience. What role for international cooperation actors? Thank you for joining us from around the world. Our audience is growing fast. Our last show on global health and gender hit a record 3,000 viewers. Thank you for that. To our returning viewers, welcome back. And to our new ones, welcome aboard. I'm Gallagher Fenwick, your host. Up next, we're going to be hearing from the directors of Expertise France and House, our Finnish hosts. But first, let's break down the stakes. Why does cyber resilience matter now more than ever? As of early 2026, cyber threats are reshaping our world. Recent years have seen a surge in physical attacks on submarine cables, data centers, and public networks. These attacks reveal a harsh truth. Our physical and digital infrastructure is vulnerable. Let's be clear. While cybersecurity focuses on protecting systems, networks, and data from cyber threats, cyber resilience goes further. It ensures organizations and societies as a whole can prepare for, absorb, recover from, and adapt to cyber incidents. Cyber resilience is a cornerstone of European sovereignty and democratic integrity. Finland's geographical position places it on the front line of this global challenge. The country has become a benchmark in resilience. That's why we're broadcasting here today from the shores of the Baltic Sea to explore firsthand how this Nordic leader is setting the standard. Nordic, Baltic, and Western European partners are joining forces to share lessons, coordinate responses, build capacity. Collaboration is key. But first, on to our next segment, Conversation With. Hello, or hey as we say in Finnish.
Hey.
How are you?
Fine.
You're the managing director at House. Thank you so much for hosting us at your headquarters here in Helsinki, Finland. I've got plenty of questions for you, but first of all, let me also greet Jérémie Pellet, the CEO of Expertise France, who's joining us live from his own headquarters in Paris, France. Jérémie Pellet, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good. Thank you so much for asking. Can I begin with you, Kyösti Vaikavainen? Can you briefly introduce what it is that you do at House and some of the key international topics that you cover as well when walking around your offices, for instance? I know that you play a very important role here in Finland. I saw posters that say, that you're helping Finland build a more efficient government, but you're also active internationally, correct?
Yeah, and thank you. And House, we are the Finnish Institute of the Public Management, and we have been doing this job over 50 years. And like you said, our role is to strengthen the good governance here in Finland. So we cooperate with the ministries and the state agencies, and nowadays more and more our activities are related to the international projects, and currently it's like over 60% of our budget goes to the international cooperation between the different governmental sector. So we have been doing that for a long time.
Jérémie Pellet, can I start by asking you the same question, which is to briefly explain what it is that Expertise France does, perhaps for some of our Finnish friends and viewers who may not necessarily be familiar with Expertise France. And can I also ask you to please explain how Expertise France collaborates with European partners like House, for instance, to advance cyber resilience, which obviously is the topic of the day for us?
Yeah, thank you, Gallagher, and I'm really happy to be on this rendezvous de l'expertise with Kirsty and House. We do exactly the same job as House in France. Expertise France is the interministerial agency in charge of international technical cooperation, and we're part of the group AFD, the French Development Agency. And our job is to help achieving the UN agenda on the Sustainable Development Goals. And for that, our day-to-day job is to reinforce public policies around the world. And within this very large scope of countries, we are active in more than 100 of countries around the world. We tend to favor as much as possible a Team Europe approach. We are really convinced that first of all, Team Europe is key in order to turn the European objectives into action. And we are also convinced that when we pool expertise from our 27 different member states, and when we pool the expertise of our technical cooperation agencies, we are all part of a group of agencies. The Practitioners Network in House has joined us very recently. We are convinced that within this power and this amount of expertise, we are stronger. So that's particularly the case for digital. We have a number of projects ongoing with health in Botswana, where we are working together on digitalization, and we did a comprehensive cybersecurity assessment, and we organized a hackathon on this issue with House. We also cooperate in Central Asia. We'll probably come back to this part. And we have a growing activity in the field of cybersecurity. Maybe just to go a little bit deeper in this issue, my view, in short, is that we need to focus, to shift a bit the focus from cybersecurity to what we call cyber resilience, because we tend to think that cybersecurity is kind of IT threat, but we know the foreign interference, the risk of manipulation of information. We know all those risks. They tend to be seen as something within the cyber world, but that's actually a very human issue, and actually most of the threats comes from the human factor. So we need capacity building, we need simulation exercises, we need country preparedness, just as for climate change, as for any other global threat. So that's why we need to really think on this concept of cyber resilience.
Thank you, Jérémie. Kirsty, what's so unique about this, as Jérémie was explaining right now, this European cooperation? He calls it Team Europe. I understand that you guys are, working together on the European continent, but Jérémie Pellet, CEO Expertise France, was mentioning Botswana, was mentioning Central Asia as well. What's unique about this role of European cooperation in the field of cyber resilience, but also how critical are partnerships in this field, like the one between France, Expertise France, and House?
I don't know, can I highlight that enough? But if I think that what is important for the organizations like House here and the Expertise France, what is good for us is that we are kind of, let's say, neutral players, and we are the trusted players, and I think that we also share the same value base. So this kind of building the international cooperation, it's really natural for us, and it's a good thing. And then secondly, if I think that what we have to do in Europe, and like Jérémie said, that we have a big strategies, global gateway, and the policies, and we have to transform the policies into the operational activities and the support and actions, and the European level cooperation is needed there, and because we can't do that alone, and this kind of cooperation, then it makes its value that we can work in a systematic manner, and instead of having this kind of ad hoc projects, and then the benefits are much more bigger and valuable when we do that.
Of course, working hand in hand to sort of bring different but complementary aspects to the table when it comes to cyber resilience, but when it comes to global warming, climate, security issues, digital transformation, and capacity building as well, as Jérémie Pellet was just mentioning. Jérémie Pellet, if I can just close this off with one last question to you. And I'd like to ask you to, if possible, share some concrete examples of what your organization, Expertise France, does, I would say, on a global level in terms of advancing cyber resilience.
Yeah, just maybe first of all to say that I fully agree with Kirsty. I think we, in the world where we have many countries trying to not depend from just one big partner, I think Europe is seen as a trusted partner, as a neutral partner, and that's the role we are playing, and that's particularly true on cybersecurity. We have more than a dozen projects ongoing on cyber resilience. We work on cybersecurity in Kenya. We support the Kenyan authorities to comply with the European standards. We work together with House and with our Baltic friends in Central Asia, where Europe is securing satellite connectivity for the 5 Central Asian countries. And around this program, around this infrastructure program, we have a consortium of actors promoting the development of concrete use cases, increasing cyber resilience of these nations. And we really see the added value of having the experience of House on having strong institutions and their experience in the Finnish model of public administration. Also the experience of our Baltic friends in terms of cyber resistance and digital defense. And together with our support, I think we have a great showcase of what Europe is able to provide in terms of service for our partner countries. That's the full value of the European cooperation.
Thank you so much, Jérémie Pellet, CEO of Expertise France. Merci. And indeed, we're going to be hearing a lot about this transnational, international approach and this, at times, indeed, European approach to tackling the issue, both, as you mentioned, and you stressed that's very important difference between cybersecurity and cyber resilience, which is perhaps a wider net than the one of cybersecurity. Kyösti Vaikavainen, I'm going to shake your hand. I'm going to say kiitos, as we say in...
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Merci. Thank you so much. It's going to be time now for our first panel, Cybersecurity of Critical Infrastructures. Settle in for our first big picture. Well, I greet my next guests who will nicely tuck themselves into this really comfortable couch. Please have a seat, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Again, feel free to share your questions, your remarks. Some of them will be indeed addressed to our guests, perhaps to you, Maxime Lebrun. Bonjour. Hello. Bonjour. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
You're with the European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats. The acronym is Hybrid COE. It's based here in Helsinki, Finland. And you lead, I believe, a CORE training program. Yet another acronym. CORE stands for Comprehensive Resilience Ecosystem. Merci, kiitos, Maxime, for being with us today. Jean-Marie Chenou, as for you, you're joining us live from Bogota, sunny Colombia, where you work as a governance and cybersecurity expert at Expertise France. You lead political dialogues. You're going to tell us about it within the EU, Latin American Caribbean Digital Alliance. It's called EU-LAC, I believe, Digital Alliance. Gracias, Jean-Marie, for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
You're very welcome. Anssi Karkeinen, did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize if I butchered that. You're the Deputy Director General and Head of the National Cybersecurity Center at Traficom, Finland's Transport and Communications Agency. You notably, amongst many different things, oversee the implementation of the EU Cyber Resilience Act, CRA. Kiitos, Anssi. And Jaakko Wallenius, you are Vice President. Wallenius or Wallenius?
Wallenius.
I'm so sorry. Thank you, Jaakko, for clarifying. You're the Vice President for Resilience and Defense at Elisa Corporation, which is Finland's largest telecom operator. You were explaining this to me, over 30 years of experience in cybersecurity and critical infrastructure protection. Kiitos, Jaakko.
Thank you for asking for me
You're
here.
very welcome. Can I start with you, Maxime Lebrun, with the European Center of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats? What are the main challenges European democracies face in countering strategies that are deployed in order to erode the public's trust in European institutions?
Thank you, Gallagher. So it's a wide question, so it's a bit of a hard ask
Of course.
to answer. But I do have three main elements that kind of shape and drive the threat environment. The first axis, I would say that many states have become more and more brutal and less disinhibited in their use of violence and in the way they engage into strategic competition. So we do see that the rules of good behavior internationally unravel on a daily basis, and this is really something that we do have to take into account. For example, economic interdependence is being weaponized on a daily basis. Disinformation operations are being more and more violent, more and more brutal. They create more and more harm in society.
When you use the word violence, you don't necessarily mean it in a physical way. You mean
not
economic
just a physical
violence,
way.
Digital violence?
Exactly. Digital violence, for example, a lot of disinformation operations are based on hate speech and minority stereotypes as well. So this is a strong form of violence which is kind of undermining some of the core values and core elements of our societies. So the first point I wanted to make with that is that we need to consider that pretty much everything is now possible.
Yeah.
That since there are less and less rules and international law is being damaged by many powerful states, this is a reasonable planning assumption.
Yeah, and that means that we're going to be talking about this. We're going to have to find new ways to adapt to that reality that you're describing, which is obviously a very daunting one to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
Jean-Marie Chenou, live with us from Bogota, Colombia. I wanted to ask you, about harmonizing cyber resilience strategies. Maxime was describing this new environment, which I think is not confined just to Europe. We're seeing that, all over the globe. How do you go about harmonizing different cyber resilience strategies in the region that you cover that is so wide, that encompasses, Latin America, the Caribbean, and so you're basically working with and in very different regulatory and technological contexts. So how do you create harmony between those different spaces?
So first of all, there is a strong political commitment in the region, both in Latin America and the Caribbean, and of course in the European Union, towards more cooperation aiming at cyber resilience. So we are part of the EU-LAC Digital Alliance, the digital alliance between the European Union and Latin America and the Caribbean. And Expertise France is leading the cybersecurity component of the policy dialogue of the Digital Alliance. So we operate within a framework of an agreement between head of states in both regions. So there is a strong political commitment that's on the, let's say, positive side. And the challenge, you mentioned the diversity of the region, and this is the main challenge, actually. It's the structural diversity within the region and between the region and the European Union. So when we try to harmonize, then we work with very institutionalized frameworks, dense regulatory frameworks in the European Union, and maybe much more diverse ecosystems in Latin America and the Caribbean. We work with, for example, Chile, who has a brand new national cybersecurity agency. They have a state-of-the-art cybersecurity law, but we also work with countries that are designing their very first cybersecurity architecture, that are drafting their very first national cybersecurity strategy. So the idea is to how do we face this diversity, and the idea is not to export an EU model that is not maybe a fit for specific countries, but rather to come to operational cooperation and let's say more practical similarity in the way we approach cyber resilience.
Yeah, adaptation. I was just, discussing that, talking about that with Maxime Lebrun. Truly feels like it's one of the keys. You can't just take one EU model and sort of stick it on an entirely different geographical area. Thank you, Jean-Marie. We'll be coming back to you. I just want to take a second to acknowledge our viewers who are watching us and saying hi from Tunisia, from Ecuador, might be a friend of yours, Jean-Marie, and also say hi to Menel Ricardo, who's joining us from Angola. So hello to you, Menel Ricardo. Ansi Kerkenen, Deputy Director General and Head of the National Cybersecurity Center at Finland's Transport and Communication Agency. How do you go about prioritizing investments and resources to address, this wide scope of challenges that we have to confront when resources are limited, and when, for instance, in your case, you're looking at cyber threats in different sectors like aviation, transport, critical infrastructure? How do you go about determining what should come first? Planes, cars, infrastructure?
Thank you. Of course, it's a very important question. As you mentioned, resources are not very high all the time. So I think it's the first thing, of course, is to do a risk-based approach to of course, what's a threat landscape and in that way to see in which spots of the infrastructure or the system are those maybe more vulnerable points. But of course, I think also collaboration between government and also private sector is very important, because 90% of the Finnish critical infrastructure is still owned and maintained by private sector. So having a good trusted cooperation with between government and private sector is very important to actually discuss and maybe also decide together what are those points in the whole system in which we can and which is very let's say beneficial to invest in, so that the impact will be the biggest or the high. So that's and also many times it's kind of not having a very fancy things, but maybe building maturity from the bottom. So doing basic things first.
Yeah, and learning from that experience. Yeah. You were just mentioning public-private partnerships, and I know it's a big topic for you, Jaakko Wallenius. You are Vice President for Resilience and Defense at Elisa Corporation. On public-private partnerships, when preparing for this show, you were insisting on one word, which I think is a key pillar in your operating philosophy. Correct me if I'm wrong. That word is trust. How do you go about building trust between, as Ansi was just saying, the private and the public sectors?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's the trust is important factor, especially in this time when the security situation is changing, and we're facing different kinds of threats. And one of the things that we have been considering, and we have our experience in Finland in a way that even though you have a rigid legislation, you have to have some kind of way to implement it. So unless you don't implement, you have only paper. And implementation goes with a cooperation, with shared interests and trust. Trust you can also interpret as an understanding. It's not question on if somebody is cheating or not. It's question of understanding and being able to share information, share knowledge, and share ideas and also share experiences. And we have we can promote strongly on idea on discussing, also disagreeing, because not always you have the similar approach with for instance with government. With ANSYS organization, we are in quite often cooperating. We have different views, but we are able to find kind of conclusions that are fulfilling the actual need. Then we need to have tools. We need to have ways of communicating. We have to have ways for kind of maintaining that trust also. It's a cultural issue also.
So let me just insist on the fact that you guys right here represent, public and private sector and working hand in hand. So important. Thank you for insisting on that, Jaakko. Maxime, if I can just turn to you. I know that one of the topics that you're looking at, and I said so when introducing you, we're in Helsinki, Finland, which is where you're based. This is a country that recently applied to NATO and got admitted into NATO. And I think that one of your focuses is looking at how coordination between the EU and NATO can be improved. Can you, perhaps share with us some of the leads that you're looking at in terms of, how that can be advanced, how that can be conducted, done, in terms of improving coordination between these two entities, specifically on the issue of cyber resilience?
Exactly. Well, the main thing in countering hybrid threats and doing it more effectively, and by making the EU and NATO to cooperate more effectively, is to find ways to impose more costs on the hybrid threat attackers. For example, if we speak about sabotages in the physical realm, if we speak about cyber sabotages as well, and cyber attack, there is really a need to put a lot of resources on investigative capacities to understand who has actually done what.
So that's attribution.
That's attribution. That's more than that. That's about detection. That's having as much information and as much knowledge about the perpetrators of hybrid activity as possible.
How does that make the cost go up?
It makes the cost go up because, for example, if we speak about not necessarily within the cyber realm, but within the realm of oil tankers in the Baltic Sea, cutting pipelines or communication cables, if perhaps the crew or the captain of this ship would have the knowledge that their colleagues on a previous journey who have dragged their anchors a little bit too much, they have faced severe legal consequences. That's what we call deterrence. Deterrence by punishment, and that's very close to criminal deterrence in a way. So I think the key question here is to try and bring out all the resources that nations can, that the EU at the collective level and that NATO can at the collective level do to be better at investigating those practices.
And I think that one of the challenges, and correct me if I'm wrong, is implementing that in order to make the cost go up. But the other imperative is to do so while remaining within a legal framework, which can be challenging because you are dealing with folks who are oftentimes operating outside of that legal framework. So how do you recommend handling that sort of asymmetry between the way we are meant to operate and the way they, are adversaries, competitors, enemies, if you would call them that, operate?
So there's always going to be an asymmetry between us and our adversaries. I think one of the key questions, and that's really through the EU specifically, is the question of harmonization. For example, the NIS directive, the CER directives, all of those pieces of legislation that aim at making the EU's internal market more efficient, more resilient, more protected from foreign attacks, then that's the key to also exchange good practices and to see how can we speak in the same terms, having the same standard of security, and to make the EU more resilient collectively. Speaking of harmonization, let's switch continents and go back to Bogota, Colombia, to ask you, Jean-Marie Chenou, governance and cybersecurity expert at Expertise France. How would you say do initiatives like the one that you work on and with the EU, Latin American Caribbean Digital Alliance, contribute to enhancing the protection of democracies against, transnational cyber threats?
So I think one of the main issue here is the protection of critical infrastructure. If a population can trust that they are getting access to essential services, through digital means, then they're also more inclined towards the protection of their own democracy. So we don't work directly on disinformation. We don't work directly on maybe as an maybe a response to cyber threats directly, but rather on the frameworks, on the identification of what is the critical infrastructure, what are the essential services for the population of one specific country or within a sub-region. We did that, for example, in Central America. We help countries in Central America define what critical infrastructure and essential services are and how to protect them. And this is, I think, one of the main ways we can maybe establish a strong cooperation and trust at the bi-regional level to protect democracies and to maybe reinforce the idea that the EU-LAC Digital Alliance is not only a cooperation project, but rather kind of an alliance within the context of digital transformation to promote shared values, especially digital transformation that is centered on the person, on the users, on the individuals, and not only on businesses or state interest. And this is something that was already mentioned during the EU-LAC Digital Alliance declaration back in 2023, and we are trying to make it real by establishing the framework for cooperation and to maybe focus on critical infrastructure and essential services as the first thing that comes to mind when we want to protect our democracy. We need some access to essential services such as water, such as energy, but also information and finance so that we can trust that our government is protecting our population.
Thank you so much, Jean-Marc Chenot. Absolutely fascinating. Back to Finland, Helsinki with you, Anssi. Let's talk about the implementation of the EU Cyber Resilience Act, the CRA. What would you say, Anssi, are the key challenges in ensuring both compliance and fostering resilience amongst businesses and public entities? And just as a reminder, you're the Deputy Director General and the head of the National Cybersecurity Center at Traficom, which is Finland's transport and communication agency.
Of course, as we all know, typically we're not talking about the small and medium-sized companies,
SMEs.
for example. SMEs, it's of course their resources are not that high than if you compare that to those big ones or huge ones. And of course that's always challenging when you are bringing new regulation and new requirements. First question is that do we have any resources to implement those requirements? And that's, of course, I think that kind of universal challenge, not only here in Finland. And of course, many times it could be some kind of understanding issue if they understand correctly things, and that way kind of low awareness in that case. So costs and budgets also challenging them. But what we do and what our kind of national approach, I think in all the cases is that we try to do things like more like beforehand than after. So
anticipation rather than reaction.
Exactly. So what we do what we've done also, for example, with NIS2 is that we try to give lots of guidance and give them practical information how to implement things.
Maybe a quick word about NIS2, if you can, for those of our viewers who don't necessarily know what NIS2 is, just one word about it, maybe.
Yeah, it's a EU regulation of cybersecurity or information security, and which was actually updated a couple of years ago, I think, already. And now I think most of the countries in EU are already accepted their national laws about that. But anyway, it gives more requirements to critical infrastructure service providers, like overall.
Jaakko Valenius, so you work for Finland's largest telecom operator. What would you say are the most pressing challenges when it comes to ensuring the resilience of infrastructure like the one that you're in charge of defending at Elisa?
Yes, well, maybe the largest challenge is the change in the security
Environment?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because nowadays we have to take into consideration that there's a stronger risk on state-backed actors behind, and there might be some kind of more aggressive objective than just to, for instance, steal something. So it's maybe the major change. In addition to that, naturally, development of technology it increases complexity, and also the supply chains are quite complex. So the complexity is another thing. Maybe the third thing is the required investment. As investment is something that you have to allocate based on your assessment on what's the best use for it, and there you have more needs than you necessarily have resources.
Since you're talking about investments, just a quick question I wanted to ask you is perhaps one of the most important initial investments training, and training everyone, because at Elisa Corporation, which you're defending, I feel like you need to develop a culture of sort of digital awareness, which means training everyone from the person working the front desk all the way up to the CEO.
Yeah. Training is really important. Knowledge or skills in different levels and different ways. It's a kind of foundation. If you're considering cyber resilience, it's also it's risk management. It's general management. So it's quite broad topic. And one of the things I want to emphasize is that the investment is not necessarily always money. It's also kind of processes, cooperation, and as you said, very well training.
Thank you. Maxime Lebrun, quickly, I really wanted to ask you about cognitive warfare, because I know that that's one of your topics. If you can just in one sentence explain what cognitive warfare is. I think it's not necessarily clear for everyone who's watching us. And the obvious question is, once you're dealing with cognitive warfare, what needs to be done in order to protect our, for instance, European information space from the influence of authoritarian regimes, which are using hybrid means to sort of pollute, attack that space?
Cognitive warfare is really about how an adversary might want to kind of reshape the way in which we process information. And that has cyber dimension, but that has mostly, and that's the most important one, I think, individual dimensions, how we individually process information, how we understand what we see. And the key question here is definitely the regulation of the information space, which is definitely a slippery slope. But
because people will accuse you of censorship.
Exactly. And most often calls for ending censorship end up in making social media more dangerous. We see it with Grok, for example. So it becomes a more and more dangerous place for societal well-being and also for civic discourse. How we discuss with each other, how we build opinions, how our public opinion is shaped. And that, in a time of conflict, would be extremely critical.
Anssi Kärkkäinen, maybe a last question with you. What role does Finland play in shaping EU, wide cybersecurity policies? Obviously, Finland has become incredibly influential on the topic, both, I would say, of cybersecurity, but also cyber resilience.
I think our approach is always quite pragmatic. So when we develop new regulation or things, we as I already mentioned, we do cooperate with lots with the private sector also. So what is kind of sensible and pragmatic legislation really, and always think that legislation from implementation point of view, what this really affects, and does it will it be like win-win situation between government and private sector, or is it one win or win for not the both, but the one of the players? So that's very important.
Being pragmatic. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I want to thank you again for the very inspiring conversation. Maxime Lebrun with the European Centre of Excellence for Countering Hybrid Threats. Merci. Thank you. Jean-Marie Chenoux, governance and cybersecurity expert at Expertise France, who was just joining us live from Bogota, Colombia. Muchísimas gracias, señor Chenoux. Ansi Kerkenen, and I'm so sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing your last name. You're being so polite about it. You are the Deputy Director General and Head of the National Cybersecurity Center at Traficom, which is Finland's transport and communications agency. Kiitos. And you, Jaakko Valenius, you are the Vice President for Resilience and Defense at Elisa Corporation, Finland's largest telecom operator. Kiitos to you.
Kiitos.
As well. All right, time now for our next segment, which is Fresh Look. And that fresh perspective begins with you, Laurent Richard. You are the founder and CEO of Forbidden Stories, a groundbreaking organization. I'm so happy I can see you, Laurent Richard. You are dedicated to protecting and continuing the work of journalists who are threatened, imprisoned, or killed. Forbidden Stories is a global network of journalists committed to ensuring that no story dies with a reporter. The organization, I quote, exposes corruption, human rights abuses, and threats to democracy, ensuring that truth always reaches the public. You're a former investigative journalist yourself, Laurent, and you've worked actually with major international media outlets. Thank you so much for joining us, Laurent Richard. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to join the conversation.
You're very welcome. Let's start with mission and impact. I just wanted to start with a very first and basic question, which is how did you come up with this idea or the concept of Forbidden Stories? And if you could share with us a specific example of where and how your organization's work has led to tangible change or justice.
Yeah, so the idea of Forbidden Stories is quite simple, that when one journalist is killed, we are 50 to rise. We are 50 to pursue the work of the journalists who have been killed, who have been jailed, who have been threatened, with two goals. The first one is to make sure we get access to the stories. We get access to the very information others wanted to silence. And the second goal is to send a signal to the enemies of the free press, to tell them that killing the journalist won't kill the story. So that's our mission. This is what we call collaborative journalism. That means that we are leading at Forbidden Stories a large network of investigative reporters, of newsroom, more than 100 newsroom, more than 300 journalists, from the Washington Post in the US to Le Monde in France to The Guardian in the UK, and many other outlets all over the world. And the concept is this one. We are putting up our resources to make sure we're going to be stronger together. We are doing what we call collaborative journalism, because collaboration will bring protection, resources, and impact. And the idea at the beginning I got is I'm still an investigative reporter for investigating that very complex stories for the past 25 years. And at some point, after reporting in many countries where press freedom was not a reality, where some friends of mine have been arrested, as well, the neighbor of the production company I used to work for in Paris, at Première Ligne, our neighbors were the Charlie Hebdo team. Wow. And so that day, on January 2015, on 7 January 2015, I arrived just a few minutes after the attack, after the terrorists escaped the building. And so I saw my neighbors and people who were doing the same work as me, who have been killed. And we tried and we did everything we were able to do to help the survivors. So since that day, I asked myself what I can do to pursue the work of others who have been killed and to keep the stories alive. And so that's a way to basically defeat impunity with journalism, with collaborative journalism. It doesn't make sense to kill a journalist if you know that 50 others are ready to pursue the work.
Yeah. When preparing for this show, Laurent, I had a talk with your colleague Emma. And I'm ashamed to say I didn't know about this initiative that you guys created, and that seems absolutely essential. So smart. It's called SafeBox. And I just wanted to know if you could explain for our viewers what SafeBox is, how do you access it, and why is it so vital and so important?
Yes, absolutely. So basically, the Sandbox network, it's a kind of virtual vault where the journalists who are the most in danger all over the globe are putting their ongoing investigation into our safe box. And in case something is happening to them, might happen to them, if they got killed, if they got arrested, if they got jail, if they disappear, we will pursue their work. And we will make sure that we will amplify the stories. So this is basically the stress and effect applied to journalism. And what is important here is not only to pursue the work, is for the journalist who is under threat to let his enemies, to let his adversaries, those who are threatening him, making them aware that he's not anymore alone, that history has a backup somewhere with the international consortium of journalists. And so this is acting as a deterrent, and more than 230 journalists worldwide are using the Sandbox network every day. And back to your initial question, most of the stories we are covering now are mostly about environmental crimes, corruption, money laundering. Those are the topics that matters for all of us. More journalists got killed because they tried to investigate the pollution caused by a mining corporation. They want to investigate the money laundering, as Daphne Caruana Galizia, a journalist, was killed in Malta, in 2017, and we pursue her work. So this is the kind of very dangerous stories we're talking about. And to tackle that kind of global crime, we need a global group, we need a global answer.
And we're seeing a very global story that actually earned you the Emmy for Best Investigative Documentary back in 2024. I don't know if we can go back to that footage while I'm talking, because I wanted to invite you to sort of comment on this documentary. I think it's called Pegasus or something like this. It's about some sort of Israeli spyware. I was just wondering if you could briefly describe what that documentary is and if we can see the footage while you're talking about it.
Sure. So Pegasus, that's the name of a spyware sold by the NSO Group, an Israeli company who is selling that spyware to dozens of states all around the world. And this is the most offensive spyware we know so far. And at some point, we will receive a list of 50,000 phone numbers of people who have been potentially targeted with this spyware. Those people were journalists, those people were dissidents, lawyers. Some of them were head of state, including we find the phone number of Emmanuel Macron, of most of the French ministers who were part of the French government. We find the fiancé of Jamal Khashoggi, who was targeted at the time where her husband was killed inside the Saudi consulate. So we decided to team up with 85 journalists from 20 newsrooms all across the globe to investigate the misuse of that spyware, to reach out to the victims, to analyze their phones. We found a lot of traces of infection, and then we published that in every country. And so, of course, many that were having a lot of echo in terms of public attention. But so far, to be honest with you, the regulation we can see on that kind of misuse of the spyware is not working, is not really regulating what we are seeing every day, including the cyber surveillance committed against journalists.
I wanted to ask you as well, we've been talking a lot about transnational cyber threats throughout the show. How difficult is it for you at Forbidden Stories to coordinate with journalists who are in different parts of the world working on different stories? How do you go about that, and how challenging is that? And how do you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, of course it's very challenging, because journalists have been trained to become lone wolf reporters. And so what we are doing at Forbidden Stories is exactly the opposite. We are sharing our information. We work with our competitors, so we're going to be stronger. The thing is not it's not only challenging to work together, it's a necessity, it's a need. We don't have the choice. Journalists are the enemies of the people, according to Donald Trump and many others autocratic leaders in the world as well. So we became the target, and so because we became the target, and because of this of how the disinformation, the fake news is spreading all around us and our communities, we need to be extremely solid. And one way to become more solid is to work together. So that's not easy. It's about convincing newsroom to change the way to operate. But on some very complex investigation, when people got killed because they tried to reveal the message, we need to team up.
We have just a few seconds left. I can't let you go without asking you what are the future steps for Forbidden Stories in terms of the fight for press freedom and for the protection of journalists?
I think first the next step is really to transform our organization into a global mechanism. I believe that collaborative journalism is the only future of journalism. I believe that only a collective intelligence coming from civil society, including journalists, should fight against the disinformation industry we are witnessing and we are suffering.
Laurent Richard, founder and CEO of Forbidden Stories, thank you so much, and merci beaucoup.
Thank you so
and
much.
I invite all
Yes,
of those who are connected to visit the website that you founded, forbiddenstories.org. Time now for our second panel, Building Cyber Resilient Societies. Settle in for our second big picture. Feel free to send some questions or remarks, which we will be sharing with our guests, whom I will now be welcoming, starting with you, Markus Holmgren. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
You're welcome. You're a research fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, where you specialize, amongst other things, in geoeconomics, digital resilience, and the geopolitics of technology. Kiitos, Markus.
Kiitos.
Christelle Amélie Emre, you're a digital and cyber policy advisor at the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You took a ferry, I think, to come to Finland,
Exactly.
correct? Yeah,
yes.
Thank you so much. You contribute to the promotion of Estonia's cyber resilience model, one of the most advanced, I would say, models in Europe. Aita?
Yes,
Yes,
perfect.
thank you in
Merci
Estonian. It's not
beaucoup.
perfect, but I give it a try. And you, Marion Lindroth, you're a cybersecurity expert and project manager for the Cyber Citizen Initiative at Aalto University here in Finland. As such, you specialize in developing civic cybersecurity skills, and you've contributed to research on cybersecurity education across Europe. Kiitos. Et vous, Denis Boyer, vous êtes chargé de mission sensibilisation
in
aux
charge
risques
of
cyber
raising
au sein
awareness
du
to cyber
dispositif
risks at the core of the cybermalveillance.gouv.fr initiative. You are with us from France, and you are working at cybermalveillance in 2022. You raise awareness to audiences, threats. Thank you, Denis. I'd like to start with you. You were in charge of the broader audience, and you said that this spectrum, this population, wasn't covered in the past. And I think you are fulfilling a real public mission. Why is it so important for the general public, for cybermalveillance.gouv.fr, to take this in charge? Population.
Alors, merci beaucoup pour cette question,
Well, thank you very much
Gallagher.
for this question,
Il
Gallagher.
faut savoir que
You need to
l'ANSI, donc
know
l'Agence
that the
nationale de
ANSI,
sécurité
the
des
National
systèmes
Agency
d'information,
of
c'est
Security of
vraiment le
Information
régulateur,
Systems,
c'est vraiment
is
le
really
gendarme.
the
Et
regulator,
nous avons été
the
créés il y a
police
8 ans
officer. And
pour
we
nous
were
occuper
created
des
8
autres
years
publics.
ago to taking
L'ANSI,
care of
travaillant
this
essentiellement pour tout ce qui est
activity.
gouvernement,
For
grandes
government, the
entreprises,
ANSI,
grandes collectivités,
society
et en
issues,
dessous, là où il y
collectivity,
avait pas
and
grand-chose.
the
Donc, nous avons été créés en
public,
complément.
there wasn't
Nous avons
much.
pris
So
en
we
quelque
were
chose
created
cette politique.
additionally,
Effectivement, la
and
sensibilisation,
indeed raising awareness,
à l'informatique
bringing
et à
culture on
est
IT
juste
and internet
essentiel.
is
Derrière
crucial,
chacun des
because
professionnels, il y a
behind
des
each of
particuliers.
the professionals there are
Nous avons été créés
individuals.
pour
We were
cela,
created
pour la sensibilisation,
in
la
order to do
prévention, ainsi que
so,
l'assistance.
to raise awareness and assistance as well.
Denis. Markus,
Thank you very much, Denis. Marcus?
Perfect. Thank you. You're a research fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. I wanted to talk to you about whole of society resilience. We just heard from Denis how important it is, to talk to everyone about cyber resilience. What would you say are the most effective strategies in terms of engaging citizens, businesses, and governments in a coordinated effort to confront or counter hybrid threats?
Well, I think it's a difficult question in a sense because of you have to divide the responsibilities or keep them in hand. There is two ways of doing resilience. One of them is the whole of government and one of the whole of society resilience. The Finnish way is doing the whole of society approach, which means delegating power and responsibility to local level, to institutions as far away as possible, so that they will develop their own concepts of resiliency, concepts of crisis management, and then utilize those in times of crisis.
Christel Amelie Emre, Digital and Cyber Policy Advisor at the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Obviously, I think the Estonian model is a pretty prominent model for a lot of European nations because of the massive attack that you guys underwent, I think back in 2007, right?
Indeed, yeah.
What lessons should we as Europeans learn from the Estonian experience, according to you?
Thank you very much. It's a great question. I try to be brief. So indeed, Estonia faced cyber attack in 2007. It was a first big cyber attack facing a sovereign state. That's why it's really important. And that pushed Estonia to treat cybersecurity as a strategic issue, not just an IT issue. And Estonia started treating it as part of foreign and security policy, and already in 2008 created a cybersecurity strategy, which was also one of the first ones in the world, and also put in place the coordination in the government. Second important aspect here is the private and public partnership. That was quite a lot discussed already in the first panel.
Yeah, with Ansi and Jaakko.
Exactly, and I very much agree what was said before. Also, it's a very important pillar for Estonia. Already in 2007, when the cyber attack took place, it was because of the private and public sector cooperation that helped detect the attack in a matter of hours, not weeks or months. And another important aspect is also transparency. Estonia is trying to be very transparent. Every year, Information System Authority is publishing a yearbook where all the incidents and situation of the cyberspace is presented, and today they...
So this is transparency from the government vis-a-vis its citizens, right?
Citizens, and also internationally. It's published also in English.
Okay.
So just to, show what's going on, not to hide what's going on.
And does this yearbook also tackle the issue of attribution? Do you also mention where these attacks are coming from with a degree of certainty?
Yes, the attribution aspect was also mentioned there. What I'm trying to say here is that it was the last year's book was published just today. Soon it will be available also in English. Also different aspects are published there. And just I'd like to highlight one interesting finding there. Obviously, we can say that the cyberspace is becoming more and more complicated, more and more threats, but 2/3 of the cyber incidents with real impact took place because of fraud and phishing in Estonia. So that's a very big issue there, and therefore another key aspect to highlight here is awareness raising, education, and go on with that. We have been doing that for some time.
I think we're going to talk about awareness throughout the entire show, and I wanted to widen our scope with you, Marian Lindroth, cybersecurity expert and project manager for the Cyber Citizen Initiative at Aalto University. You work with the Cyber Citizen project that aims, I believe, at building a common model for cybersecurity skills across EU member states. That's why I'm saying, let's widen the scope. What are the biggest challenges, according to you, when it comes to ensuring that all citizens, regardless of their background, develop the necessary skills to navigate an increasingly complex, as Christel Emre was just describing, a digital threat landscape?
Yes, this is quite a vast question, but I try to keep my answer short. So basically, maybe the biggest problem is that people might not have understanding why this is important. And that also links to motivation. So if you do not understand why something is important, you are not motivated to learn it. And also there's lack of time. So as people have so much going on in their lives, learning about cybersecurity, educating yourself about it is not a priority. So these are the issues we are facing when we try to help people learn these things. And also people have unequal starting points, different ages, professions, and also digital access.
Is one of the ways that you make people understand how important it is to them and why they should treat it as such, that you explained that these attacks, such as phishing, can have very concrete consequences, at times financial consequences for them.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's important to explain it so that it's not just like technical terms or something like that, but actually links to real life. So concrete examples, and also one size doesn't fit all. So not everyone wants to learn from videos or have e-learnings or do some quizzes or things like that. So we have to have variety of different kind of methods for people to learn, and also as they have different kind of time limitations, they must have someone who wants to learn more must have more accessible information available, and those who just want to have some glimpse, they can have shorter ones.
Awareness in French is sensibilisation, et c'est l'opportunité pour moi de me tourner à nouveau vers vous. Denis Boyer,
now I'm turning now to you, Denis Boyer, working on cyber risk at cybermalveillance.gouv.fr. Denis, you insist on the need of raising awareness permanently in order to anchor, to root, and this is what you explained to me, the cyber culture within organizations and populations, and you are taking part to an initiative, the Cyber Month, which is unrolling on the European level. Maybe you can say a word on that, Denis. Absolutely. I fully agree with what Marianne just said. Raising awareness is crucial, and it must be coordinated in order to communicate massively. You need to have this European project, and the Cyber Month is working. It's the third year that we communicate extensively in October. Two key elements: Pink October and the Cyber Month. The Cyber Month is a time to speak to everyone, whether professionals, whether a private individual, a public agent, to raise awareness. And the aim, in order to have this dissemination, broad dissemination, you need to make everyone an ambassador. We made some visuals that were shared broadly, and we disseminated via the social media. And we're coming back to this awareness that Marianne mentioned. Basic things, we're going to talk about passwords that are long and complex, unique, safeguarding, and as individuals and professionals. People, so backups and all that. And so people have relayed the messages by sharing their experience, by sharing the different visuals. The aim is to really root things and make people become ambassadors and be convinced. Thank you. Marcus, now, Holmgren.
I know you advocate, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, for tighter ties between EU and US digital services providers. How do you go about convincing people that that's a good idea given the current environment, and where people are thinking, we might have a hard time articulating in that relationship two different needs: security on one hand and sovereignty on the other?
Well, given current times, it's more important than ever. We need to move beyond the customer-provider relationship into more equal partnership grounds. The Europeans should seek some key technological transfers and to learn to maintain our own systems. When it comes to sovereignty, or digital sovereignty in these affairs, it is at its core on ensuredness, unquestionability of control of those systems of which our state functions critically rely on. And that has two components. It has the quality of control that the state and the agencies are able to do what they need to do, and the security that they are able to do that at all situations, even in crisis situations up to the most major crisis situation, meaning a war. And thus, when we develop these capabilities and relationships of those upkeepers of those systems, we need to ensure that these both aspects are getting better. Maybe they are not ever going to be fully successful. It's very hard to have a total sovereignty, but at least it would improve as we are going forward.
Christel Amelie Emre with the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I know that you guys in Estonia advocate a pan-European approach, but how do you go about building trust between the different member states that don't necessarily want to cooperate on this issue or are wary of cooperation on a sensitive issue like cybersecurity or even cyber resilience to a certain extent? How do you build that trust amongst them?
Perhaps here three ideas. Firstly is the cooperation in multilateral organizations. We were also discussing earlier EU and NATO in the first panel, how to improve the cooperation there. Also there is United Nations, and that is important to align threat perception and promote responsible state behavior in cyberspace. Secondly, joint exercises and research. For instance, in Tallinn, we have a NATO Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence. And they're running, for instance, a large-scale training called Locked Shields. That's also very important to promote trust. Also, this center, they are doing joint research programs, for instance, on international law, which plays also a very important role in cyber discussions. And thirdly, capacity building. That's very important to build trust between the countries which are more advanced digitally and less advanced digitally. So I would say that these, for instance.
Marion Lindroth, I was asking Markus a couple minutes earlier about, that articulation between security and sovereignty. I wanted to ask you about two other ideas that aren't necessarily easy to articulate together when we're talking about cyber resilience, and that's healthcare and data protection. You've emphasized the need for regular pan-European cybersecurity exercises in healthcare. How can hospitals and healthcare providers balance the demands of patient care with the urgent need to prepare for and respond to cyber threats?
So basically, the reality of healthcare is that patient care comes first, and cybersecurity is often seen as an extra work. And this is the problem. And I do think that the key shift would be integration, not addition. So basically exercising, creating new processes, all that, it should be integrated to existing structures. So basically emergency preparedness and continuity planning, all that, safety drills and crisis protocols, they have it in place for physical security. So maybe cybersecurity could be embedded in that. And also this European cooperation reduces the burden. So smaller hospitals, of course, lack resources. They could collaborate with other smaller hospitals, maybe have joint exercises or share the best practices and things like that. Because the fragmentation weakens the resilience. And also, as mentioned, shared scenarios, exercises, maturity models, all this could be shared within the community. But this is maybe where we need EU or nation-to-nation collaboration so that we have the structure for sharing all this.
Denis Boyer, si je peux me tourner vers vous à nouveau.
Denis Boyer, may I turn to you? You are in charge of raising awareness to cyber risks for cybermalveillance.gov.fr. By preparing this show, you mentioned questions that are the most frequent ones. I'd like you to share them with those watching today, but maybe you could share some issues that you've seen, or tricks or traps, pitfalls, maybe a few figures also on the solicitations that you receive. I think they're impressive figures. Yes, since we are a small organization with 20 people, we put everything online on our platform. We have more than 5.1 million visitors in 2025, and we had more than 500,000 assistance demands for professional, 28,000, or local authority. So this helps with this big numbers to talk about the different threats and to mention those that will impact people most. And one of them, Marianne mentioned it, phishing. Phishing is the first threat for all audiences. We talk about the ocean of cyber malveillance. You start by phishing, you enter your info, and then it becomes a ransomware. So this is really the state of threat that impacts most audiences. Then in the examples we see, if people collect your identification or password, it's an issue, but people don't see what it can involve. It has an impact on real life and on the economic level, because they can pirate your account, and we all keep our emails and private information, important information, and when it falls into the hands of a cyber attacker, it's dangerous. So we come back to the basics, protection of everything that is important when it comes to an account, social media accounts. We must activate dual authentication. This is not just trivial or usual for common users, for the elderly or for the very young. Thank you very much, Denis.
I think you advocate for a unified auditing and standardization process at the European level. And you're favorable to the creation, I think, of a European agency in order to pool expertise, and you're calling on European member states to stop competing with each other. Kind of similar question to the one I was asking earlier. How do you go about, convincing folks that that's actually a good idea?
Well, luckily, as a researcher, that's not my job. But I think here the easy solution is that I'm fairly confident that it would be cheaper for the member states, precisely because of that intra-EU competition. The technical auditing requires a lot of technical and legal expertise, and there is a limited pool of experts in Europe. And right now, the countries are creating unnecessary duplication and fighting for these experts. And if we pooled everything together, we could make the system more efficient and cheaper for the member states, and provide some added value for the applicants also, and perhaps most importantly, it would make the single markets more fair for inside entrants, because now a company that comes from outside the EU can shop between these auditing regimes, choosing which is the most likely to pass them, whereas a company coming from inside the EU has to choose their local auditing body, irrespective of how expert that is in their field or what is their general work schedule. And thus there is a risk that sometimes a company might find it favorable to relocate to another country like US and then apply to European markets as an outsider. And that's I think an issue that should be stopped.
Christelle, Amelie, last question perhaps with you. How can countries, and just a reminder to the folks who are tuning in that you represent the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, how can countries balance innovation, data protection, and resilience in digital matters, especially when resources are limited?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I believe that the key here is to stop treating innovation, data protection, and resilience as separate goals. And in practice, they would only work if they are designed together from the beginning. Let's take, for instance, Estonian digital identity and digital signature. That's how these were designed, and that's something where we can save resources and it's easier to trust also over time. And second point is also to focus on reusable digital building blocks, as we did as well with the secure identity and trusted data exchange. And this again reduces costs and strengthens resilience and data protection.
This topic is so topical and current that as we're speaking, we're just learning now that the Italian government has just confronted, was just confronted with and repelled a massive cyber attack, notably against their Ministry of Foreign Affairs and against I would say institutions that are in charge of organizing the upcoming Winter Games, which are going to be happening in Italy. So as we've just been, discussing throughout this show, this topic of, cybersecurity and cyber resilience is so topical and important. We're just about done, but I wanted to give you just one last opportunity, perhaps a last word from you, Marian Lindroth, given what we've just heard now, maybe a word of conclusion from you for this, panel. Perhaps in terms of, practical on-the-ground resilience, how do we translate regulation into, concrete actions with, keeping in mind, for instance, this Italian example, that this is not something abstract or virtual, it's happening as we're speaking.
As said, the main risk in regulation is that it remains abstract and it's hard to implement in real life situations. And also in many times focus is on compliance, not in resilience, which is not good. Resilience won't come from paperwork. It comes from coordination and reuse of good practices and also making resilience achievable for all. So maybe that would be my conclusion.
Thank you so much. And that's a great conclusion. Marian Lindroth, you're a cybersecurity expert and project manager for the Cyber Citizen Initiative at Aalto University here in Finland. Kiitos, Marian. Christel Amélie Emre, I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering your first and last name. I do apologize for that. You are a digital and cyber policy advisor at the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Haita?
Yes, perfect.
Thank you in Estonian. Markus Holmgren, research fellow at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs. Kiitos to you as well. Et enfin, Denis Boyer, chargé de mission sensibilisation au risque cyber au sein du dispositif
in charge of raising awareness to cyber risk at the heart of cybermalveillance.gov.fr. Thank you very much for your sharing all of your ideas.
Our discussion with our final segment, Outlook. I'm going to ask all three of you to make a graceful exit from the set while I greet my next guest, Sandra Cohen, who's about to step into the frame and have a seat. Sandra Cohen, thank you so much for joining us. If you could sit just right there in the central position. Thank you, Sandra Cohen. How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm good. Thank you so much. You're the deputy head of mission at the French embassy here in Helsinki, Finland. You're an experienced diplomat, and you play, I would say, a pivotal role in strengthening bilateral relations between the country you represent, France, and our local hosts, Finland, particularly on issues of cybersecurity. So we want to hear you about this. But you also strengthen that bilateral relationship on digital innovation, resilience of critical infrastructure. And obviously, and I'm just going to state the obvious, this is so important given that both countries, Finland and France, are part of the EU and of NATO. Before we get into that, maybe just a first impression without expressing any preference. We just had a hour-long conversation, 2 different panels. Is there perhaps a thought or an idea you wanted to highlight?
Yes, thank you, Gallagher. And first of all, before answering your question, I would like to thank you for having chosen Helsinki to host this.
It was an obvious choice.
Yes, to my eyes, after 2 years in Finland, I think Finland and the Baltics are, in general, are a wonderful example. Yeah. And I want to say that Finland, in particular, they have this attitude towards any threat that is cool, calm, collect.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. We're going to adjust your mic because there's a slight brush. Yeah, I think that's
Right.
much better. Perfect. So back to what you were saying. I'm so sorry for interrupting you.
So Finland
Yeah.
is a cool, calm, collect country.
Absolutely.
And it is this way because they are prepared. And that's the key takeaway that I will take from today's discussion.
Yeah,
Be
preparedness.
prepared, be prepared, and be prepared involving the whole society.
Yeah.
And really, this is the most important. Your previous speakers have mentioned that the world is becoming brutal,
Yeah.
that the threats are becoming more and more complex,
Yeah.
and we need everybody at the table
Yeah.
to deal with that. So there are also many other takeaways that I could mention. For instance, the cyber resilience is much more than cybersecurity. And I was really impressed by the journalist who came up and explained all the threats that journalists are facing.
Yeah.
Journalists through social media, they are facing a lot of threats personally, and their protection is key for our democracy and our resilience as a whole. So this was really impressive to hear such a testimony. And also, I would say that all what we have learned today is an echo to our French national cyber strategy that was released very recently. The fact that you have to be resilient, the fact that you have to halt the expansion of threat, whether with deterrence, I think Maxime mentioned being deter.
Yeah.
Other speakers have talked about protecting infrastructure. These are very good actions.
Yeah.
So we have
deterrence, awareness, resilience, and preparedness, as you mentioned. I just wanted to ask you, because I was explaining that you play a pivotal role in that relationship between France, the country you represent, and Finland. So obviously, you're in charge of, to a certain extent, organizing this synergy. But how does it translate into concrete actions? Are you engaging in joint exercises, or do you develop, common cyber norms, or do you do alert sharing? What kind of concrete actions do you guys do together?
all of that and much more. Previously, you have invited Maxime from the Center of Excellence Against Hybrid Threat, and it's important to see that this is something that Finland brought to the table. It's a creation of Finland, and France was a founding member of this center. So this is a concrete example of all we can do together. Together, whether at the EU, which is our most preferred framework, or together at the NATO, we are doing a lot, exchanging practices, as previous speakers have mentioned, but also trying to foster new ideas, making our guys meet their guys, and this makes the difference. So you have seen probably that Finland last year was the chair of the OSCE, and within the OSCE, which is a big international organization, they have done a lot to make dialogue about cyber resilience much more valuable, and we have contributed to that. We are also working together in the Tallinn mechanism in support of Ukraine, so it's also a lot of information sharing, best practices. And the third point is that we are participating to new initiatives. The importance of private and public cooperation was mentioned, and on this regard, Finland is a member of the Palmal mechanism that France has launched with the UK and other countries. And this is a mechanism to incorporate private sector into the discussion. So how do we use the commercial tools and how do we prevent hacking while letting some good commercial use of this device, for instance?
I'm going to ask you another question, but before I do so, I just wanted to acknowledge our viewers who are saying hello from Guinea, from the Central African Republic, and from Benin. So bonjour, and warm regards to our friends out there on the African continent who are tuning in. I wanted to ask you, Finland is often held up as a model for cyber resilience. They have, e-government, they have this awesome, education system. You mentioned the public-private partnerships. How does the embassy that you represent and work for facilitate exchanges between French and Finnish stakeholders to inspire, innovative solutions, perhaps in, artificial intelligence or 6G technology? while ensuring their security and the security as a whole?
So we have a lot of different actions in this regard. For instance, we keep ourselves informed of what is going on. And that involves a lot of networking, not only us trying to meet the important stakeholders, but getting our important stakeholders meeting Finnish people. So we organize a lot of visits, and we are hosting a lot of delegation, and we make sure that the people are in the same room, and we leave them speaking, because obviously they are specialists and we are not specialists. So all these kind of things, and sometimes they do need private discussion. So we make sure that
they have that space.
They have that space without their phones or whatever, but we make sure that they talk to each other.
So interesting. Sandra Cohen, you're the deputy head of mission at the French embassy here in Helsinki, Finland. Thank you so much. Kiitos, as your colleagues and friends here in Finland say. Merci beaucoup,
Merci.
Sandra Cohen. And thank you all for joining us today. Once again, you are in great numbers, and we're truly grateful for that. We'll be back very soon for our next rendezvous de l'expertise. So see you soon. In the meantime, thank you, merci, and kiitos. Merci beaucoup.